Prashant sir, I have made you as a host.
Yeah, let me just try. I'm just sharing for a second.
Yeah.
Can you able to see the screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Then I'll stop the sharing and I'll wait for.
Yeah, we are able to see it.
Okay. Okay. So it will be another 5 minutes, right? I'll go.
Yeah, we will wait for another 5 more minutes.
Yeah, I'll just go to the washroom.
Because it got just.
No problem. I'm
over. distinguished participants. The previous session was suddenly closed. It was due to the manual error that has happened at the speaker's side. The speaker's network got disconnected, suddenly, and all because of that. And he's the one who was hosting that session until that time. And all because of that, that session got disconnected. So kindly bear with me. Prashant sir, one request to you is that, once the session is started, please do mute all the mics of all the participants. Sir, your mic is mute. Your mic is mute.
Okay. No, I have made myself unmute, but how do I mute everybody?
Sir, select all the participants and then mute their mics.
Okay. But you can also do it, right?
No, I cannot do it, sir, because I have shared the complete hosting authority to you.
Oh, fine. I'm looking for that. Where does it say mute all? I'm not able to find that.
Sir, you'll be able to see an icon at the bottom of your screen with participants.
Yeah, correct.
Please do select that and yeah.
No, it only says invite. When I click that, it says manage participants. Okay. I can see that. Mute all.
Yeah,
Right.
Thank you, sir. Prashant sir, shall we begin the session because it is almost 11:25 now?
Yeah. I'm okay.
Okay.
I have all the participants joined back. I think 74 are there now.
74 are joined.
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, honorable present here. I now take the privilege of welcoming and introducing Dr. Prashant R. Nair, Associate Professor, Computer Science and Engineering, IQSC, Amrita School of Engineering, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, deemed to be University Coimbatore, to be the resource person for this second session of today's FDP today. I am also taking the honor of, introducing the resource speaker among all the participants now. Professor Prashant R. Nair is an associate professor, and he is working in Amrita School of Engineering, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, deemed to be University Coimbatore. He has over 19 years of teaching experience and research experience. He is also having experience in mentoring, training, consultancy, and academic administration experience in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. He is a rank holder from the third batch of Amrita School of Business, Coimbatore. He has taught in academic programs in USA and Europe at University of California, San Diego, and Sophia University. As an Erasmus Mundus Fellow, has written 6 books, 2 edited books, 1 book chapter, and over 50 publications in reputed journals, books, and conferences. These publications are by reputed publishers such as Springer, iOS Press, IGI Global, Alpha Science, and Narosa. has served on the program committee of almost 100 international conferences, including the IEEE R10 Humanitarian Technology Conference, IEEE India Council Annual Conference, Indicon, IADS, Internet Conference, ICDCN, etc. in countries such as USA, Canada, France, Belgium, Hungary, Spain, Portugal, Germany, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia, Bangladesh, UAE, Oman, Brazil, etc. He is also an editorial board reviewer of 6 international journals, including CSI Transactions on ICT, a Springer Journal, Security and Communication Networks International Journal published by Wiley, International Journals of Ad hoc and Ubiquitous Computing and Cloud Computing published by InterScience. Awards and recognitions include Best Faculty of the Year 2018, conferred by Computer Science Society of India, and Free and Open Software in Education initiative of IIT Bombay, Institution of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineer Fellowship 2017. He has also got a Distinguished Speaker Award, and he is also awarded with the ASDF Best Academic Administrator Award in the year 2012. He is holding several leadership roles in professional bodies and industry associations like ACM, International Collegiate Programming Contest, Asia Pacific Associate Site Director, ACM Coimbatore Chapter Treasurer, and whatnot. I welcome you to this session, sir. The session is all yours now.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Elgin Alexander, for that very kind welcome and introduction. Very warm welcome to all the participants of this AICTE STTP. I understand most of you are from business schools. Some of you are from MCA, I believe, some few from engineering and arts and sciences also. So generally, I have actually 3 sessions in this this STTP. Today, I will be just giving you an overview of the building blocks of the outcome-based education philosophy. I'm only using the slides that have been prescribed by NBA. So I am not, I've just added my own take on it, but at the same time, I'm just using those slides. So I will, in today's session in the morning, I will just give you an overview of the foundation of outcome-based education, why it is important, how you have to implement it. Tomorrow, I will go a little deeper into how you can do a good mapping of your curriculum in terms of the COs and the POs, the course outcomes and the program outcomes. And day after tomorrow, my session is a very slightly unrelated, but not unrelated so as to speak. It will stress on how an internal quality assurance cell, an IQAC, can function in an institution. It can be any institution. It can be an arts college, an engineering college, an MBA college, an MBA, MCA institution, a health sciences school, and what is the proactive role of the IQAC in being able to kind of, make a difference in the overall aspects of an institution. So that's how that will be the kind of the plan of action for today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow. So today's session is essentially just a foundation on what is OBE, or rather, I am going to very much stress on why we need to go for outcome-based education, irrespective of what what discipline you are. Perhaps outcome-based education has taken a head start, especially in engineering schools, but other institutions are also coming into that mode, coming into that groove, so as to speak. You will be surprised to know that, even kind of absolutely unrelated disciplines like medicine and health sciences, even they are now talking of how to implement outcome-based education. Because I work in our university, we are multi-campus, multidisciplinary. We have campuses all over South India, and we have medical school, Ayurveda school. So working on how we can go for a outcome-based education approach, not only in engineering, but in all disciplines. Even medical discipline, they are actually the Medical Council of the new body, the NMC, the National Medical Commission, is also looking on how to convert the medical programs into a outcome-based education approach, into a semester system. They are thinking of getting away from that yearly annual system into a semester. So all these things are being discussed. And one thing I want to say, in the stress of the outcome-based education, the relevance has totally increased, especially when we in India are in the throes of a new education policy. It's a great initiative, but then, as they say, devil is in the details. It will take time for that to be totally implemented and how to percolate down the book. So without much ado, I will just share my slides. Just give me a minute. Are you able to see my slides? Are my slides visible? Can I just get a yes or no, please?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, thank you. Because sometimes, when the screen is on, you don't know if visible or not. Okay, so today's session, as I mentioned, will give you an overview of outcome-based education. What are the enablers of outcome-based education? What is outcome-based education? What are the building blocks? And most importantly, why we need to go for outcome-based education. And as I mentioned, OBE is needed across the board, irrespective of what discipline you belong to. How I am able to share some of my good practices is because of the slide is not. Okay, so I have been working in the Coimbatore campus of Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham University for the last 18 plus years. Currently, I serve as the coordinator of the quality cell and associate professor of computer science here in the Coimbatore campus, which is also the headquarters of the Amrita University. Amrita University is actually 6 campuses. The headquarters is here in Coimbatore. There are campuses in Cochin and in Amrithapuri, that is near Kollam in Kerala. There are campuses in Mysore and Bangalore. And last year we started a new campus in Chennai. Another couple of campuses are expected in the next few years in Delhi, and there is another upcoming in Amaravati, that is a new capital of Andhra Pradesh. So presently I coordinate the quality cell of the Coimbatore campus. This I have been coordinating for more than 4 years as on date. But for over a decade, I functioned as the chairman or vice chairman of the quality cell, internal quality assurance cell for the entire university. All campuses, for 2 years, I was the chair of the IQAC, and for almost 9 years, I was the vice chair of the IQAC. So in that role as the IQAC chair and vice chair, we have gone for two and a half cycles of NAAC accreditation. Both the times we got the best grade. This time we are due for the final inspection, but it has not happened because of the COVID pandemic. I also have been coordinating national and international rankings for the university. Today, Amrita is the top private university in India and ranked 4th in the country in the entire university. And also NBA, National Board of Accreditation at the university level. Here now 4 programs in this campus, in Coimbatore campus, have got NBA accreditation, which I have been coordinating. Another 3 programs we are actually in the process of, we have completed everything, but only the inspection is pending. Several other programs we are actually looking at working on it for the MBA program in Coimbatore, other engineering programs in Amritapuri, Bangalore, etc. We are working on that accreditation process. So that's to speak about my experience. Of course, I stepped down as the university level chair last November, almost a year now. But then still I'm involved in all the activities at the university level, even now because of the, the kind of interrelationship. That's about my experience. So this experience is, even though I'm using the slides that have been prescribed by NBA, I'll be trying to peppering it with most of my experiences and stuff like that. So this is something I maybe if there are some statisticians in the audience, people from mathematics and statistics background, they would be very, they would be familiar with this quote that I have slightly modified. This is actually my quote, but part of it I have taken it from statistics. In God we trust, but for everything else we need data. That is from statistics. So I have added my own 2 cents to it, that the data that we have needs to be supported by evidence. I'll repeat, quote, in God we trust, but for everything else we need data, and the data has to be fully supported by evidence. See, we are living in such a world today that we have to keep records and documentation for anything and everything we do. Now, you may argue there's a lot of bureaucracy and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, in today's regime, we have to follow the law of the land. We have to follow the rules and guidelines and regulations of the country, the various statutory, regulatory, accreditation authorities. So today, we have to, it is absolutely necessary. We keep proper documents, we keep proper documents for anything and everything we do. And that is the foundation or the bedrock of whether it is outcome-based education, it is internal quality assurance cell, whether it is going for higher rankings, going for higher accreditation, going for anything or everything, absolutely national education policy is coming. Yes, it's a major boost towards the education. All said and done, in India, we have separate statutory bodies, separate regulatory bodies, and separate accreditation bodies. There are 3. There are statutory bodies, to some extent, MHRD. There are statutory bodies like All India Council for Technical Education, which governs engineering, management, education. There are other statutory bodies like Medical Council of India that governs medical education, Indian Nursing Council for nursing education, NCTE for teacher education, Ayush for Ayurveda education. So that is all statutory bodies. Now there are regulatory bodies also, like UGC, MHRD. Maybe you are part of a university, you are affiliated to a university, so that university also does some kind of regulatory framework with respect to the college. So you may be a college, you may be autonomous. If you are autonomous, you are regulated by UGC. If you are affiliated to university, you are regulated by the university and its governing structures. And third, there is a accreditation agency. So in India, we are in a system where there are separate statutory bodies, separate regulatory bodies, separate accreditation body, and many a time they may or may not see eye to eye, and as a result, there is a huge amount of documentation involved for each of these. Now, maybe the national education policy comes into force, all these things will become will change. We are very hopeful. We are very I am, to be very honest, I am cautiously optimistic, because there has been so many regulations, so many bodies for last 50-55 years. In one go, it is very, very difficult to, wish away all these things. Let me mute all. Yeah. In one go, it is absolutely impossible to wish away all these things. So in such a situation, it is absolutely necessary that we keep documentation for everything and anything you do. When I say documentation, whether it is teaching, whether it is extension, whether it is consulting, whether it is executive development programs, management development programs, community development programs, research, innovation, anything and everything, the documentation becomes the most important bedrock. That is why I am again reiterating, in God we trust, but for everything else we need data. And that data has to be supported by proper documentation and evidence. The evidence is absolutely necessary. Now, when you take Western countries, say if you take America, now I worked in America for a brief period of time. There are no statutory or regulatory agencies. There are no statutory or regulatory agencies. Anybody can start an engineering college or an MBA college as long as you get all the municipal and county permissions. So there are no statutory bodies, there are no regulatory bodies. You may have to do some registration with the government, but they don't regulate you. They just ask you to register and do some paperwork and stuff like that. So there are no statutory or regulatory agencies. There are only accreditation agencies in the US. So there is AASCB, American Association for Collegiate Schools of Business, that accredits MBA programs all across the country, all across the world rather. There is ABET, American Board for Engineering and Technology. ABET is actually a engineering accreditation agency in the US. And ABET is a member of the Washington Accord. So what happens is that in India, if you are an autonomous institution and you go for NBA accreditation, because NBA is a member of the Washington Accord, your degree or your program has equivalence to that ABET program. There is an equivalence, so as to speak, because NBA is a member of ABET. NBA Tier 1 means if you are autonomous, if you are affiliated to a university, you cannot do that. But if you are autonomous institution or a deemed university or a private university, you can actually apply for Tier 1 accreditation, and that Tier 1 accreditation is equivalent to ABET because of Washington Accord. That is the kind of this thing is there. So the situation in India is very different. We unlike Western countries, where and again in US and all, accreditation is not mandatory. If you want, you can go accredited, but if you want to attract good students, good faculty, good collaborators and all, it is better to go for accreditation. But having said that, it is not mandatory. So we are in a system, unlike the US where there is only an accreditation agency, we are in a system where there is a separate statutory body, separate regulatory body, separate accreditation body. And that is why we need to have proper documentation. Maybe moving forward, things may change, but that will take time. As I said, devil is in the details. We don't know how these things will pan out. My take is that, for this education policy to be completely operational in full, it may take 3 to 5 years, I feel, maybe more, we don't know. Anyway, I'm cautiously optimistic and looking forward to it. Now, what is OBE and why OBE? That's the pertinent question that we ask. Generally speaking, outcome-based education is how you are developing higher order capabilities, competencies, qualities, attributes, and skills in your graduates. I will repeat, outcome-based education is how you are building higher order capabilities, competencies, attributes, qualities in your graduates. It is absolutely discipline neutral. Even a doctor needs to have higher order capabilities and competencies. An MBA graduate needs to have higher order capabilities and competencies. An engineer needs to have. A BCom graduate needs to have. A pharmacy graduate needs to have. So it is absolutely discipline neutral. How you are trying to build higher order capabilities, competencies, the attributes and skills in your graduates. That's the main objective of OBE. Now, how do you do it? Well, you need to have a three-pronged approach. You need to tweak your curriculum. You need to tweak your teaching learning methodology, teaching learning process, pedagogy, tools. You need to tweak your examination or evaluation system. So for OBE to work, because you are trying to build higher order capabilities in your students, your graduates, when they graduate, so as to speak, you need to improve, you need to tweak your curriculum, you need to tweak your teaching learning process, you need to tweak your examinations or evaluation system. Only then, you need to have, you can implement outcome-based education. So, graduates who go through OBE have that higher order capabilities. See, generally traditional, outmoded approaches of rote learning, mugging up, all these are encouraged in our examination system, or rather encouraged even in the curriculum. The curriculum is not good, the teaching is not good, the examination system is not good. So it is like, three times the confusion, so as to speak. Students are not thinking, they are just, trying to reproduce what they have read in the textbooks or something. They are writing exercises that are no application orientation. The teaching also sometimes is not too inspiring. So there is a huge problem. Students are generally moving towards CGPA. Students are moving towards exam orientation and so on. And who is telling? The industry is unanimously and vociferously telling about this. A few years back, NASSCOM, which all of you know is the National Association of Software and Service Companies, the majority of the IT industry, $200 billion IT industry, most of them are NASSCOM members. And NASSCOM has done some study on what is the state of affairs. You will be very surprised to know the results. The results are a huge revelation or a huge shock. Now, estimates that over 75% of the folks joining the IT company workforce, they are from all disciplines. Maybe primarily they may be from engineering, but it includes students from MBA, students from MCA, students from other backgrounds who made a lateral shift into IT companies. But the overall perspective is that almost 75% of them are not at all employable. They cannot be employed. The company has to do a major upskilling, a major retraining, major finishing school to make these graduates up to speed. It's a very alarming trend. In some disciplines, I'm told it is 85%. I think they were looking at arts and sciences graduates alone, management, arts and sciences a lot. They found out it was like 85% of them are not at all employable. So it's a very serious, absolutely a very, very serious trend. And we are also seeing, when you see the unemployment and all, especially of graduates, we are also able to see that there is definitely a gap between what the industry wants and what the colleges are giving as a product, that is their graduates. So definitely something has gone wrong. Something has gone wrong. Otherwise, these employability statistics would not be so grave, would not be so alarming. You know, when you are talking of 75 to 85% of graduates not being employed, there is definitely a problem. In fact, I wanted to stress one thing. Today, everybody is talking about startups, Startup India, Stand Up India, and all. Recent surveys say that out of 100 students who graduate, irrespective of discipline, barely 3 of them can get into a startup. They are only 3 out of 100 are startup ready. As you know, a startup is, a bunch of young folks making a new product, making a new innovation, doing a lot of going through a churning process, trying to build something and so on. It's a wonderful experience, but having said that, it's a risk. But only 3 to 4 students who are graduating today are even ready to get into a startup. So there is definitely a problem. And the problem percolates down due to the lack of a proper education system, where the curriculum has to be improved, where the teaching learning process, the methodology, the pedagogy has to be improved, where the examination or the evaluation system has to be improved. And the answer is overwhelmingly going for outcome-based education. And outcome-based education not only improves these kind of capabilities, also builds in a lot of other kind of skills that are very important. So this is a survey done by a few years back by a group of companies, and you will be surprised to note that many of the employers, many of the companies do not care so much for the grades. Not that they don't, they completely discount the grades. Grades are definitely grades, and good percentage is definitely an indicator, but that does not rank very high in terms of the the attributes that are preferred by the employers. Employers seem to think that the life skills. Somehow I don't like this word called soft skills. I don't like that word. Soft skill is not a good word. They may not. I don't know how they got into hard skills and soft skills, but I call them life skills. Outcome-based education helps you in a big way to also promote, your life skills. And these are the skills that industry wants. How you can properly communicate, whether you have teamwork, whether you can maintain good relationships, whether you can work in different cultures, whether you can work in different milieus, what kind of work ethics you have. Are you having integrity? Are you honest? Are you having the drive? Are you having the motivation? Are you a multifaceted human being? Are you able to go to do analysis? These are the things that, actually speaking, companies prefer compared to your grade. You may be a topper and all, but then at the end of the day, if you do not have these life skills, you may not be preferred by the employers. So we are actually seeing that also. Many a time, if you go to your colleges and ask the placement cell or the corporate relations or industry relations cell, ask them who landed the best jobs, the highest paying jobs, the dream jobs, they may not be the toppers. They may be very good people who are much above average, but they are multifaceted. They are multi-skilled kind of students. They are the people who land the best jobs. Even now, I remember in our university, a couple of years back, somebody got a direct placement, I think 3 years back, if I'm not mistaken. The guy got a direct placement into Google, not Google India. He got a direct recruitment into Google Mountain View in the US. He was not a 9-point CGPA student. He was a 8.3 or 8.2. Maybe he wasn't the top 20% of the class or something like that, or the batch, 20-25% class. But he was having a lot of other skills. He had won some international hackathons. He was some sort of champion in the Rubik's Cube, or that, the Rubik's Cube. He was in some world championship and all. So these are the things that, companies look for. Companies look for all these kind of life skills, and outcome-based education not only improves your curriculum, improves your teaching learning process, improves your examination system, but outcome-based education also prompts the development and imbibing of these kind of life skills in your graduates. And that is why, irrespective of discipline, it pays to go for OBE, because you are improving the life skills of your students, you are improving your curriculum, you are improving your pedagogy, you are improving your examination system. So that is the broad perspective on why we need to go for OBE. I also already told you this, I already told you curriculum, exams, teaching learning process. And what happens, the students are able to have higher order capabilities, higher order competencies. The students are able to achieve higher things, and we are also able to measure. That's perhaps the most important thing. We are able to measure them in very finite terms. Okay, this is where your students stand. You are able to measure, right? There's a very famous statistical saying, you cannot control what you cannot measure. I will repeat, you cannot control what you cannot measure. So when you are able to measure things, you are able to control things better. You are able to regulate them, improve them, tweak them, upgrade them. That possibility is there to a huge factor when you come to OBE, because you are able to measure, you are able to improve. You are able to improve in all aspects and all dimensions. So this is what I was trying to tell you. Traditional education process, you have teachers, you have faculty, you have equipment, machines, so software, library, all these you transform to the graduates. So the graduates are your products, albeit they are the most important products. And the entire transformation happens in the teaching learning process. But this traditional education process is focusing on the even if you are running an MBA college, I'm just telling you an example. You have to go for AICTE approval. AICTE also only focuses on the inputs. How many classes you have? If you have 120 MBA students in a batch, minimum you need to have this many classrooms. This many elective rooms you need to have. This many computers you need to have. This many digital library software you need to have. This many books you need to have. They even specify how many copies of Philip Kotler is needed in the library to some extent. This many marketing books, this many finance books, this many HR books, this many IT or information systems books. All this is in. So AICTE, which regulates management or technical education in India, only focuses on the inputs. This many teachers are needed. This many qualified teachers are needed. This many classrooms are needed. This many library books are needed. This many computers are needed. This many software is needed. This many databases are needed. This many journals are needed. But what about the output? Is the MBA that is coming out from the portals having the capability? That is not at all being measured. Okay, you can measure there in terms of the first class or the distinction, but that's not a very effective measurement. That is not an effective measurement. That is only a post-mortem kind of analysis. You are not doing an a priori analysis. So that is where OBE comes in. OBE calls for measurement at every stage. There is a feedback loop. If you see this diagram, the importance of this OBE system is that you are measuring at every level. Every course you are measuring the course outcomes. Every program as a whole, if you take an MBE or a BE or a BTech program or an MCA program, you are measuring the attainment as a whole. If you are taking a single course, say accounting, there is, what is the measurement? If you are taking elective, what is the measurement? So it is a feedback driven approach, where you are measuring at every point of time what you are doing, where you stand, and so on and so forth. That itself is a very big boost over the traditional education system. As also, we are able to take the feedback, get the feedback, accordingly use the feedback to improve the curriculum, improve the methodology of teaching, promote the usage of tools, have better tools, have better methodologies, have better pedagogy. Also, you are able to improve how you are evaluating students. What are the instruments that you are using for assessing the students? You can improve those also. And that feedback is provided by the outcome-based education system. And that is what this slide tries to showcase. Just give me a minute. Now, coming to what are the building blocks of outcome-based education, which are the major building blocks of outcome-based education in terms of what is the vision, mission, PEOs, POs, PSOs, and so on. So this is what I will be covering. So this is actually the second half of my presentation, where I'm trying to give you an understanding on where, what are these building blocks of outcome-based education. So we have seen, till now we have seen, okay, outcome-based education is building higher order capabilities, competencies, attributes to your students and graduates. How do you do it? You are improving your curriculum, you are improving your examination system, you are employing your teaching learning process through continuous feedback system. So these two things we saw. And all this, I also told you, stressed upon how important documentation is there for everything. And now we will see how the basic building blocks of OBE are, like vision, mission, PEO, PO, PSO, and CO. So that will be the next part of the talk. I already covered all this. Now, as you know, the vision and the mission. I don't need to tell you. Thank you. Thank you. Give me a minute. I don't need to tell you that a vision is something that is generally from a long-term perspective. A mission is something from a short to medium term. A vision could be something that you look maybe a vision may be something that you may be looking at a short, medium term to long term perspective, something between 6 to 15 years. A mission is something that is a short to medium term, maybe up to 5 years or 6 years, 3 to 5 years. And every department, whatever be your discipline, whether you are in engineering, whether you are in management, whether you are in pharmacy, whether you are in arts and sciences, it is absolutely important that we have a clear vision and a mission. Now, many colleges that I consult with ask me this question. You know, sir, already our college has got a mission and a vision. Why should the department have a vision and a mission? Now, many colleges come with this question. But if you ask me, as a department, where do you stand? I am not saying that as a college, you shouldn't have a vision and mission. But as a department, it is absolutely necessary that you have a vision and a mission. Obviously, that mission and vision should be in alignment with what your college or your university is planning or aspiring to, so as to speak. So it is very necessary that every college department has a vision and a mission. Having a vision and mission. Vision is, of course, long term, maybe 6 to 15 years. Mission is something short term, maybe 3 to 5 years. But it at least helps you to focus on the future. It provides you with an opportunity to benchmark. Where do you stand today? What do you want to be 3 years from now? What do you want to be 5 years from now? What do you want to be 10 years from now? What do you want to be 15 years from now? It gives you that that trajectory. So actually, and also speaking, your college will have some, your college may have diverse departments. There may be a microbiology department. There may be a biotechnology department. There may be a management department. There may be a computer science department running BCA, MCA courses and so on. College will have a more of a holistic vision and mission at an institutional level, which has to look at all the disciplines. But as a department, you need to definitely have a kind of a clear mission and a vision on where you stand, where you are, and where you want to be 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. So vision is a dream in a long-term perspective. Mission is something you want to achieve in 3 and 5 years. And this process is not at all easy. Many people think that writing a vision and mission is simply using some flowery language. It is far from the truth. Vision is the dream and how you hope to aspire that. Mission is a short-term objective and how do you plan to achieve those objectives. But how do you do that? How do you implement that? How do you execute that? The process of evolving a vision and mission is highly decentralized, bottom-up approach, involving stakeholders, absolutely important to involve all kind of stakeholders, involving all people, getting feedback, brainstorming, doing a SWOT analysis, getting inputs from all the stakeholders. Where your graduates have gone, the industry that have taken your graduates, where your own graduates who have become alumni. When they go to the industry, they tell you, okay, this is happening in industry, this is not happening. You are focusing on this, this is not what the industry wants. Necessary not only at a minute level for the curriculum, but also to evolve your vision and mission. Because the vision is long term, 6 to 15 years. Mission is short term, 3 to 5 years, but you need to, and both vision and mission should change as per the time. Many people say, oh, mission and vision, I'll never change. It's a holy cow. It is not so. Mission and vision should change. Mission and vision should be dynamic. I'm not saying you change it every day. You can change your mission once in 2 or 3 years. After 3 years, you think, I thought this was my mission. Now I've got so much of feedback. I think my mission has to change. Nothing wrong in it. After 5 years or 6 years, there is nothing wrong in looking into your vision and saying, okay, this is what I wanted to be 5 years back. Now I think I have to change, benchmark myself with a different thing. So these things are dynamic. These things have to change. These things have to evolve. But the process starts, the outcome-based education starts from formulating and evolving a vision and a mission. Vision is long-term, vision is short-term. But evolving that vision and mission from so many perspectives, from so many stakeholders, getting the best out of it. That is the very, very important process. So, as mentioned, these are just some examples given by NBA as to what are good and bad statements. Now, if you read this, I will give you a minute to read this vision and mission that I have shown in the slides. Please take a minute and read this, and I will tell you what is wrong in here. or what has to be improved in this vision. Please take a minute and read this vision and mission. Yeah. So this vision is somewhat okay. Vision is pretty good. The institution wants to be one of the best in the country, and the institution wants to focus not only on education but research also, and they want to monitor their programs, improve their resources. Vision is somewhat okay. But if you see the mission here, mission appears to be highly, highly futuristic and highly not at all at a short term. The mission says to develop high quality professionals ingrained in ethics, wisdom, and creativity for the betterment of a society. This is not a mission. This looks more like a vision statement. So this example of vision and mission, definitely there has to be a relook into this mission, because this mission looks more like a vision. It is not having clear objectives or clear things that deliverables in a short term. It is very high level, very long term. Okay, making some professionals who are ethical for the good of the society. That is a vision that you want to achieve. So this mission statement does not qualify to be a mission. It is rather a vision. Whereas the vision is somewhat okay, but the vision can be slightly fine-tuned. And let us see how we can improve this. This is a much better vision, where some aspects of the earlier mission have been incorporated. I will give you a minute to read this. Please take a minute to read this vision and the mission. So if you see this vision, here the earlier vision has been very much improved to emerge as one of the nation's finest institutions of higher learning in the field of technical education, to develop professionals who are technically competent, ethical, environmental friendly for betterment of society. So here it's very clear. The earlier vision has been slightly improved with more inputs. You want to aspire to be one of the top institutions in India or the country, but at the same time, you are also looking at making well-rounded professionals who are very competent, who are ethical, and who have a societal focus. So that's very clear. And this mission appears to be a lot better, because this is something at a short term or a medium term. You are accomplishing a stimulating learning environment for students through quality teaching, research and outreach activity by providing the best facility, industry and faculty. A little much more finite, much more short term, much more achievable, much more doable. So you are now focusing on providing the environment for your graduates. And not only that, you are focusing on the education that is improving the quality of the teaching, the quality of the research, and the quality of the outreach activities also. And how do you do it? You are giving them the best faculty, the best facility, and of course, the best engagement with industry. So this example looks to be a very good example of good vision and good mission. A vision that is very esoteric and holistic at a long term, and a mission that is essentially short term to medium term, where you are trying to focus on the ambience, where you are trying to focus on the learning environment, and where you are trying to focus on providing good teaching, providing good research, providing good outreach, and so on. This is another good example, again given from NBA itself. Hello? Yes? Sir, I'll just call you later. I'm in session now. Take a minute to read this vision. This is a very good statement. It's for a civil engineering department where the civil engineering department wants to be a center of excellence focused on society, whereas the mission is again to make a good ambience, not only focusing on curriculum, but also co-curricular professional activities and so on and so forth. So this is a very well-rounded vision and mission. It is very clear, it is very easy to understand, it's easy to analyze, and it's well written in the sense that it is vision is long-term, mission is short-term. Now coming to the PEO. The PEO is program educational objectives. In many places, they even call it as program educational outcomes, but it's more or less the same. The PEO is basically the objectives, what your graduates are able to do in the first few years of after graduation. What are the capabilities? What are the skills? What are the attributes that your graduate can do in the first few years of after graduation? So if you take a marketing professional, is the marketing professional able to make a end-to-end marketing communication plan for a product? Is it possible? Yes or no? Is a finance professional able to make all the ledgers and books in such a way that prepare the books and ledgers in such a way that he or she is able to bring out a financial statement from that? So this is the attributes that one graduate can do in the first few years of graduation. So it is essentially entry level, not entry level into the industry. It's not at in a long term or a medium term perspective. It's essentially a short term perspective. Once a graduate completes an MBA, he has specialized in, say, marketing. What are the things that marketing MBA can do in the first 4 or 5 years? What are the skills that he has? What are the activities that he can do? What are the objectives that he can do? And that is PEO, program educational objectives or outcomes, both are same. These PEOs are again influenced, just like the vision and the mission, by several inputs. Inputs may come from industry. Inputs may depend upon global needs, local needs, and so on. Now, just to give you an example. Today in finance, we are talking about GAAP, General Accounting Principles, right? Now, what is the state of the industry? Have all Indian companies completely translated their financial compliance to GAAP? So you need to answer that question, right? It depends upon the industry. Now, if it is a stage where 70 to 80% of the companies are completely transitioning into a GAAP compliance regime, then it is absolutely important that you teach your graduates what it is. If your graduates go in, a finance graduate goes to the industry and say, oh, I didn't learn this in my MBA. I mean, he or she will be looked down upon, right? So the program education objectives or outcomes look at what your graduates can do in the first few years of graduation, number one. Not only that, what are the attributes he or she should have immediately after that? And these are local needs, the global needs, by the industry, by the vision of the institution, by the stakeholders. Industry, alumni. Many a time we have got a lot of inputs from alumni. I mean, perhaps when we are in academic positions, when we are in academic positions, on and off somehow we get disconnected from what is happening in the industry. Many of our alumni give us inputs. Sir, you have taught this. Now this software tool is completely vanishing from the industry. You have to change to this tool. These kind of operational strategic, mostly the alumni will be able to give you only operational or tactical inputs. Change this tool, use this tool. This tool is, industry is using this a lot. These kind of tactical inputs your alumni can give. Industry can give you much better inputs. Industry may be able to give you strategic inputs. You know, our expansion is into this area. Why don't you train your graduates to have competencies in this emerging areas? So those kind of strategic inputs will also come from industry. Alumni will give you tactical inputs, and that way you can improve your PEO. So we started with the vision, long term. Then we came to the mission, medium term to short term. Now we have the PEO, the program educational objectives. All these will and should be influenced by various stakeholders, driven by local and global needs, influenced by all stakeholders like your alumni, by your industry, by your employers, and so on and so forth. So now that is the PEO. Now we will see some PEO. This is not a very good PEO. This is of a department of electrical engineering. Now, if you analyze, I will give you a minute to read this. If you see this PEO, it's not a very well written PEO. It only from the PEO, you can summarize or you can deduce what this department is doing. So the department is very clear. The department is not is a very generic department. They are looking of electrical engineering in a broad perspective. They are giving them a series of courses and skills that prepare them for higher education. They are giving good communication skills and some societal orientation. Now, let me also tell you that the PEOs of every department will be different. PEOs are written for a program, but a program, it will be slightly different from your department or my department. Now, I will give you an example. So, I teach in the Amrita School of Business here in Coimbatore campus. Our focus is the best faculty, most of the research, etc. is my area is information systems in my MBA, but that is not at all a focus area here now. Focus area has, we used to have a lot of systems electives, information systems electives, strategic management of information systems, software project management and all. Nowadays, students are not taking those electives because information systems as such has slightly changed. That's my specialization. Now the students are looking all towards analytics kind of electives. System specialization itself has wound up. I was leading it 4 or 5 years back in our business school. Now the specialization has completely given to an analytics stream. But even then, analytics is only one stream. The major strength continues to be marketing, HR, and so on. Same way, if you take a different department, very nearby, we have a PSG Institute of Management in Coimbatore. Now, I have a lot of good friends there. I am told that 60 to 70% of the students there are either children of entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. And whatever happens is that the placement numbers are not so great because most of them jump into entrepreneurship. So it is very clear, the PEO of PSD Institute of Management should be heavily biased towards entrepreneurship. It will be there because that's how the output is. Likewise, the courses, the electives, the specializations, they will be definitely veered towards entrepreneurship. But in our university, it may not be like that. So these PEOs are generally, obviously, they depend upon the attributes that you are giving your graduates in the first few years of graduation. But having said that, they will be very specific to your department. The PEOs are for a program, but that program is resident in your department, and based on that, it will be very, very different. Now here, this is a little better PEO, again from NBA. Here, civil engineering, they are very clear that from this PEO, you can make out that this department is focusing very much into three areas. They are training students to go for a construction industry or public sector units or entrepreneurship. These are the three areas that is very clearly mentioned in the PEO because that is where their graduates have gone. And of course, they are also giving them a higher education focus. Now, the PEOs, as mentioned, should be very specific to that department, depending on what that department is, what are their strengths, what are their vision. Now, I'll give you an example. If you go to, say, IIT Madras, you take any bachelor's, say, take bachelor's in computer science and engineering. Out of the 100 students, maybe 70 of them are going to America for higher studies. Maybe 10 of them will go for some high-paying jobs. Another 10 of them may go for higher studies in India, other IITs or IISc or some top universities. And only 10 of them probably, go for entrepreneurship. So, if you see the mix, 70% are going abroad for higher studies. 10% are going in India for higher study, albeit in very good institutions. So 80% of the graduates are going for higher studies. 10% are going for high-paying dream jobs. Another 10% are going for entrepreneurship. So it is very clear that how your PEO has to be affected by that, right? So you have to definitely prepare your majority of your graduates. If you are an IIT Madras computer science department, you have to focus them very much on higher studies, how to prepare them, equip them to go for higher studies. How do you have courses for that? So the PEO will be very specific to the department, considering the input from all sources, everywhere and anywhere, all feedback and so on. Again, the process for PEO is again bottom up. Lot of stakeholder involvement is needed. Lot of inputs have to be taken from all people and so on, just like the vision and the mission. I have already told you, all outcomes have to be and are measurable. You cannot control what you cannot measure. If you want to change things, you have to measure it to make things. Again, I already covered this, that evidence is very much important for anything and everything in outcome-based education. I'll come to that a little later in the next presentation tomorrow. Now coming to the program outcomes. So we saw vision, we saw mission, we saw PEO or program educational objectives. Now we are coming to the program outcomes. Suppose you are running an MBA program. What are the outcomes? Outcomes means the program outcomes are basically the knowledge, skills, and attributes that a graduate should have. So I am now giving an example of engineering. I will come to MBA after I get, because this engineering has more program outcomes. After I explain that, I will come to the MBA outcomes. But program outcomes are knowledge, skills, and attributes that a graduate of a formal engineering program should have. What are the attributes? And as far as India is concerned, NBA has given 12 POs, which are fairly universal. Now, I don't know, I have seen some MBA colleges having different POs, but I feel that a subset of these 12 PEOs can be adopted for any program or every program. I have used this for arts and sciences programs. I have used this for other programs. I find these to be very fairly universal. And also, these POs from NBA are actually given, have been adopted from various US accreditation agencies like Abbott and AACSB. They have only taken some inputs from Abbott and they have slightly modified it to suit the Indian context. Now, I'll come to the MBA POs a little later, but let me explain the concept of POs with these 12 because it's a superset, and then go to the MBA POs. Now, if you take the 12 engineering POs that are defined by NBA, fairly comprehensive. They start with the individual, move on in a very holistic manner, and in a more all-encompassing sense. So it starts with a knowledge. Just forget engineering knowledge, any knowledge. How you are applying the knowledge, how you are analyzing a problem, how you are designing and developing a solution for the problem, how you are investigating the complex problem. Now, as many of you are MBA faculty, you know, we swear by our case study method. All of us swear by your case study method. Even I have written a couple of case studies many years back. Don't you do this for your cases? If you are if you are analyzing a case on how the mobile phone market in India is, you need to first understand the basic idea about the mobile phone. What are the technologies that are being used in India? Market is very, very fragmented. Big problem. There are monopolistic players. I don't want to name which company is having monopolistic practices. But are you not analyzing the problem? Are you not proposing solutions? Are you not investigating them? So these POs appear to be fairly universal. So if you are having a case study approach, all these four POs will be there. You are analyzing. When you are looking at a case study, you have to analyze what industry it is. You have to do an industry study. You have to understand what the industry is, who are the competitors, what are the technologies, how the market is moving. All this is coming in knowledge, problem analysis, designing and developing solutions, complex investigation. All this is being covered. That is why I told you that these POs appear to be very comprehensive. Now what? Using tools. Are you not using tools? Are you not using Tally to do financial statements? Are you not using a capstone strategy game? Capstone, you know, you're teaching strategy, you're having a capstone game, a strategy game, management games, tools, right? Are you not using Excel for quantitative methods in management? So this appears to be a very good distinction. Now coming to the manager and the society. Are your actions having a societal perspective? How is it influencing the society? What are the ramifications at a societal level, at a health level, at a safety level, at a legal level, at a cultural level, at a social level? How is the action that you do helping the environment? Is it hurting the environment? Are you considering the sustainable dimension? Are you considering the ethical dimension? All these, you know, I find them music with regard to many courses. If I have a course on values, it will directly map to 6 and 8. If I have a course on quantitative methods in management, I will map to 5. If I have a course on ethics, it will map to 8. Right? So, these are very fairly universal. Now, the next set of attributes or the POs, individual and teamwork. How are you working individually? How are you working in teams? All of us in management education know that everything is about teamwork. Most of the exercises we prefer to give it in teams so that they work in team and figure out, understand the group dynamics, understand the form groups, forming, norming, storming, performing. How are you able to communicate properly? Management is all about communication. Without communication and coordination, happen, staffing doesn't happen, leading doesn't happen, controlling doesn't happen, organizing doesn't happen. Project management, how do you manage as a whole? And finally, how you are in a trajectory towards lifelong learning. So if you see these 12 POs, they appear to be fairly universal. And I don't see why an MBA college cannot use these POs. You cannot use all of them, but you can use a subset of many of them. You can use a knowledge analysis of the problem. So there is no hard and fast rule that you should follow this or that. Guideline. This 12 POs appear to be fairly universal, fairly like a superset of everything. But you can decide what to adopt. Knowledge, analyzing the problem, designing and developing a solution, investigating the problem, using tools to solve the problem, focusing on the society, environment, sustainability, and the ethical dimension, working in teams and in groups to perform, communicating effectively, managing the whole thing, project management, looking at the economic dimension, and finally, lifelong learning. So they appear to be fairly universal. And as I mentioned, in my own experience in the last 10 years, I have used this in many programs, like BCom or MCom. Slightly, we have modified these POs. Here and there, we have done some minor modifications of these POs. Otherwise, by and large, we have been using this one. Now, this I got from one institution. Many MBA colleges have been using this this thing. Apply knowledge of management theory and practices to the business environment and solve business problems. It is the same as 1 and 2, right? More or less the same. Foster analytical and critical thinking abilities for data-based, data-driven decision making. I think it's similar to 3 and 4. I feel more or less mapping to 3 and 4. Ability to develop value-based leadership. That is maybe different. But to some extent, leadership comes in project management, finance, and teamwork. Ability to work in teams to achieve organizational goals. 9. And finally, express willingness and enthusiasm to accept responsibilities, learn from mistakes, and take on challenges with confidence. This appears to be one of the POs that I got. But there's nothing wrong in it. It's very good. But what I'm saying is, it's only a subset of these 12 POs that have been given by NBA. Some more POs, rather PSOs. Discuss ideas effectively and persuasively in different settings using technology, tools. This maps to the tools. Think creatively and be open to diverse views and actions that benefit society. Teamwork, communication, and society. Be trustworthy and fair in interactions. So, how you are showing integrity, trustworthiness. So, what I'm trying to say is that ideally, if you ask me, as any institution, whatever be your discipline, you can simply adopt one of these POs, use a subset of this, slightly tweak it if you want to focus on leadership and all, you can have some idea. That would be my personal recommendation. When you are going, you can use this 12 POs. You can use a subset of them. Maybe you can add a few POs or PSOs that are separate, like this MBA program, and so on. Okay. Now coming to the PSO. PSO is very specific. Program specific outcomes. Now, generally speaking, the PSO should, my personal understanding is that the PSO should definitely mirror, should definitely highlight the various thrust areas of your department. If you are an MBA program focusing a lot on entrepreneurship, you should definitely have one PSO that very specifically flags the entrepreneurship aspect. Because entrepreneurship is very important. That is a focus of your department. If you are into, say, very much heavy onto, say, marketing and retail. So, essentially, the PSO should, see, the 12 POs are, which I mentioned, are very universal. You can slightly modify them, tweak them. You can use a subset. You can add some things, but they are very esoteric and holistic and universal. But the PSO has to be very specific to, and also the PSO should mirror the strength and the thrust areas of your program and of course of your department. That is very important. Now, if you see this PSO, it is very clear. This is a NBA example. It is of a civil engineering department. It is very clear that from there, from the PSO, you can understand that this department of civil engineering has got 3 thrust areas. One thrust area is into structural engineering. Another thrust area is into water supply and sewage systems. And third PSO is into transportation systems, transportation engineering. So it is very clear, maybe bridges or whatever. So from the PSO, you should be able to get a good idea on what are the strengths of your department. What are the thrust areas of your department? What are the focus areas of your department? And essentially, they should definitely be mapped into your PSOs. They should be essentially reflected into your PSOs. So if you are if I take the business school that I teach, Amrita School of Business, I'm placed in the engineering school, but I take classes in the business school also. Very clearly, there are 2-3 thrust areas. Marketing focused on retail. Analytics focusing on all kind of business. Third area is focused a lot on research, because we are a private university with a huge focus on research. So a lot of activities have to be focused on research. So if I read it, I can easily tell the PSOs, because I know one thrust area is in this, another thrust area is in this. Likewise, probably if I am a PSG Institute of Management in Coimbatore, I may have 2 PSOs focused on entrepreneurship, because everybody is entrepreneur into entrepreneur. Maybe another. So there is no hard and fast rule, but ideally the PSO has to map to the thrust areas which the department has. Right? That should be the focus on of the program specific outcomes. I think this is my last slide for today. So as mentioned, we started with the importance of documentation. Documentation and data. Data and evidence is the bedrock for anything and everything. And then we looked at OBE, outcome-based education, which is building higher order capabilities and competencies. How do you do it? By changing the curriculum, by changing the teaching learning process, by changing the exam system. This will be covered tomorrow in tomorrow's session. Then we came to the building blocks. We started with a vision, then a mission, then a PEO, program educational objectives, then a PO, program outcomes, and finally we came to a PSO, a program specific outcome. And in essence, OBE puts you on a trajectory towards continuous quality improvement. The essence is say what you want, do what you say, prove what you say, and improve what you do. I'll again repeat, say what you want, do what you say, prove what you do, and improve what you have been doing. I'll close for today. Again, thank you for patient listening. I'll be happy to answer queries. Either you can put in the chat. I'm just looking at the chat now, and I will start answering one by one.
Thank you, sir. Participants, if you have any queries, you may ask now. So there is already one question in the chat box. I'll read that for you.
Yeah. I'm looking.
PEO versus PSO with reference to department. Please one query that is coming.
Yeah. So 1 minute. Where is the question? PEO. Please see. As I mentioned, PSO is mainly what are the focus areas of your department, the trust areas of your department. So this is more at an input level. It is more at an input level, meaning that I'm focusing on entrepreneurship, I'm focusing on analytics, I'm focusing on finance. This is again more of an input focus, but the PEO is more at an output focused. Program educational objectives or outcomes means what your department will train the students and what are the attributes that these students will have after graduation and the first few years of graduation. So that is the meaning of the between PEO. PSO is more focused at an input level. PEO is at an output level. Obviously, there will be some interrelation because the PSO is nothing but doing nothing but stressing or highlighting the areas of strength of your department. That is very much being done. And obviously that will be shown in the outcome of the PEO, where what are the skills that your graduates will have. Now, if I peel it down further, okay, you might be, just to be giving you an example, you may be focusing a lot on advertising courses. I'm just giving you an example. One of your PSO is focusing on advertising. But when it comes to the PEO, the student is capable to design a visual ad. That will be the PEO. He or she will be able to completely run a marketing communication campaign. That is a PEO. But your PSO will giving a lot of courses or focus on marketing communication. I hope I was able to now there is another question. What is the difference between PO and PSO? See, like I told you, PSO is very broad. PSO is very broad and all encompassing, like, tools usage, knowledge, conducting investigation, understanding ethical dimension, understanding sustainability. This is broad and irrespective of discipline. Any discipline will have all these things. You have to be, whether you are a marketing graduate or a civil engineering graduate or a doctor or an engineer, you need to be ethical, right? Whether you are a doctor or a MBA graduate or an engineer, you have to be sustainable, right? So these are POs, program outcomes, but PSOs are focused on that discipline. Meaning, if you are an MBA graduate, the PSO will focus on the specialization of your MBA program. Whereas the PO will be very broad and, holistic. The last one, another question is PSO for department and PEO for institute. No, PEO cannot be for institute. I'm again repeating, an institute or a college or a university will have only a vision and a mission. I will repeat, college will only have a vision and a mission. A department will also have a vision and a mission. A department may be running several programs. You may be running a BBA and an MBA. For BBA, you need to have a separate PEO. For MBA, you need to have a separate PEO. You need to have a separate PEO. You need to have a separate PO. You need to have a separate PSO. I hope I am able to explain. I'm looking at the old questions also, if there are any. So I don't see any more questions. You can even come online and ask questions, no issues. I have already sent all these slides to the organizers, to Dr. Elgin. I have already emailed the slides. So I'm sure they will share it with all of you. I have also given my email ID in the chat, but I'm open to questions. Madam, there is a question on what time is the next session. You can please
Next
answer
session
that.
it is at 2:15. 2:15.
Okay.
Next session is 2:15. And will be handled by Dr. Rabindra Henry.
Okay, one more question has come. Any features of NEP with reference to OBE? So, see, the NEP is a vision document. I would say it is a vision document which promises to, so it's a more of a vision document. I have not been directly involved in the NEP at all, but I have interestingly I am involved in the National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. Today, Government of India is now deliberating the National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. We are actually, I'm one of the faculty ambassadors. I believe they have 20-30 faculty ambassadors all over India. I'm one of the 20 to 25 faculty ambassadors. And we are having a lot of activities going on. It is going on in 4 tracks. The track 1 consultations are over. Track 2 is also over. Track 3 and track 4 is now going. But it's, see, policy is a very long process. I came to know like that. Because for the government to evolve a policy, it is actually a very long process. There is a huge consultation process of experts, stakeholders and all. And as I understand, last 6 months, and things are not moving very fast because, you know, but we have worked on doing some consultations. I have given some very good inputs to and Technology Ministry, which will have some implication in the education policy. So I am able to understand how difficult it is to evolve a policy. What I'm trying to make you appreciate is that it is a slow process. It is not a fast process. Making or evolving a policy is a long process. There will be a lot of stakeholder inputs. Then federal government or central government will make some policy, state governments will oppose, stakeholders in both places can oppose. It's a very long process. And we are now struggling in certain steps with the Science and Technology Innovation Policy. I was told that the Science and Technology Minister had to postpone that meeting with the states 2 or 3 times because of various political compulsions and so on and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that it is a slow process. Now, second thing is how OBE. See, already before the National Education Policy, which focuses a lot on autonomy, flexibility, and so on, flexible options, multiple options, multidisciplinary options. This is the, you know, the essence of the NEP. Even before that, UGC has already sent a note to all universities in India, perhaps 3 or 4 years back, asking them to go for an LOCF. LOCF is nothing but Learning Outcomes Curriculum Framework, which is nothing but OBE. So already UGC has mandated all universities to go for an LOC. Mentioned earlier, those elements, it is already if you are part of a university, if you are, when your university is going for some UGC approval, you have to give a declaration saying that you have implemented LOCF, Learning Outcomes Curriculum Framework. So it is already mandatory, and the elements of that are coming in the NEP, because only when the OBE is running and up and running, is already operational, only then we can jump into the what should I say, we can jump into flexibility, autonomy, and all these kind of things. That will take time. That I wanted to mention. So that is my answer to the NEP. This next question from Arun Nair. What is your opinion about the extent to which COs, POs, PSOs are effectively utilized by the engineering institutions? Are not these things just restricted to being on paper and file works? I humbly beg to disagree, because it is true that many institutions just do this as a paperwork and so on and so forth, lot of files and all. But when you actually go through an honest NBA accreditation, you will feel the heat if you have not done these things properly or imbibed these things properly. I hope I'm trying to make you understand. If you have not properly executed these, imbibed these things, understood the essence of these things, you will get caught when you are going for an NBA accreditation, provided it is an honest. Nowadays, I think it's cleaned up. I have heard rumors that many of these teams were not doing their job properly, but I believe to a large extent it has been cleaned up. And when you go through an NBA accreditation, you will actually feel the heat if you have not done these things properly. You'll get cut to pieces. And believe me, even a top institution, I'll be very honest with you, we struggled to get an NBA accreditation. The reason is we have not been doing it. We started this process 2 or 3 years. It was a trial and error. We went through all the things and then we struggled. We got caught in certain places. Some faculty joined 2 months or 3 months back. The NBA evaluator asking that faculty who joined 3 or 4 months back, okay, what is the department vision? So that girl didn't even know. She just joined 3-4 months back. She's getting used to the climate and the ambience. So if you don't do these things properly, you will get completely cut to pieces in an NBA accreditation. NBA, if you are an engineering college, let me be very clear with you. Without NBA accreditation, you cannot move forward. Let me be very clear with you. Why I am saying is, Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe, the chairman, very friendly and very close. I think he came a couple of years back for our convocation, 2 years back if I am not mistaken. And he has been telling this in many of his lectures also, that the government is coming with a rule which says that in the next 3 years from now, every college, wherever you are, 60% of the eligible programs must be accredited by NBA. That is what the AICTE is planning. Now, unfortunately, COVID came. That 1 year is gone, I agree. But by 2024, all eligible engineering programs, colleges will have to have 60% of their eligible programs accredited by NBA. Even today, If you have, you are starting an engineering program, you want to start an MTech program, you have a BTech program, you want to start an MTech program, you go to the AICTE portal, you cannot start. Unless that department is accredited, you cannot start an MTech program in that department. If you want to increase number of seats from 60 to 120, from 120 to 180, without accreditation, it is not possible. So already some checks and balances have come. So increase in intake, starting of PG programs is already tied to the accreditation. On top of it, within 3 years, they are going to mandate that at least 60% of your eligible courses have to be, programs have to be accredited. So you cannot escape. And unless you do NBA properly, a proper NBA evaluator will cut you to pieces if you have just done some paperwork. Paperwork is nothing. 60 to 70% of the NBA accreditation depends on the OBE, directly or indirectly. You may have 100 research papers, you will get 10 points. I hope you are trying to understand what I'm trying to say. You may have 100 research papers, you will get 10 points for that 100 research papers. You're not going to get 990 points. Only if you have OBE system in place with proper understanding, proper imbibing, proper closing of the loop feedback system, and so on, only then you can, you'll be able to clear an MBA accreditation. Another question, out of NAC, and NBA, which one has more to play as far as the topics of today's discussion are concerned? So, generally speaking, OBE is very much needed for NBA accreditation. 70% of the NBA grade depends upon OBE, number one. Now, NAC also has a very important perspective on NBA. If you see the NAC manual, 2 or 3 places, they will ask you to list the COs, POs, PSOs. I believe it may not be 700 points. I believe it may be 30 to 40, 50 points. So NAC is also focusing, requiring you to go for this. But you have to also understand one thing. See, NBA is a program accreditation. If you have an MBA program, that program is being accredited, not the MBA department. Understood, no? So your MBA program is being accredited, not the department. Of course, department is being accredited, but they are focusing on the MBA. So if you have a BBA and an MBA, that BBA is of no concern to the NBA accreditation. But NAC is a institutional level accreditation, where everything and anything, whether it is academics, finance, administration, governance, research, innovation, patenting, paper, everything is covered in the NAC accreditation. So it's actually you're comparing an apple to an orange. NAC is a institutional accreditation. NBA is a program accreditation. So there's a slight difference between the two. There is some commonality between the two. Another question, this is a very good question. There was a proposal to come up with a new body of accreditation merging NAC and NBA. It's not going to happen. The reason is, as per the Washington Accord, NBA is a member of the Washington Accord. And Washington Accord, because I have been involved in NBA, I have not been part of NBA, the committees and all, but I have been regularly attending this World Summit of Accreditation organized by NBA. And one of those World Summits, I got even a Best Paper Award also. So I'm aware of what is happening in NBA. So NBA is mandated by the Washington Accord to be completely independent of the regulatory agency, which is statutory agency, namely AICTE. It has to be independent. And in Washington Accord is very specific that this is for engineering and related disciplines. So if NBA has to continue in Washington Accord, they cannot change in any way. They have to go in the same route that is going on, because Washington Accord has given some guidelines and they are required to follow this. If you don't follow that, you will get out. In fact, Earlier, NBA used to be a small wing of AICTE. It is an extension of AICTE, but Washington Accord has mandated that the statutory body and the accreditation body has to be separate. And that is why NBA is now an autonomous body directly under the Ministry of Education. And to continue in Washington Accord, they have to go in the same path that they are today. As far as NAC and NBA, it is not possible, not only philosophically, but there is a proposal, rather than combining NAC and NBA, there is a proposal by government to have many more accreditation agencies, more than NAC, NBA. So as I understand, IIT Delhi, IIT Delhi and IIT Madras have actually floated some sort of company which will be probably in the future accrediting colleges. So the more accreditation agencies will come. That is the policy of the government. But I don't know how it will pan out, because I was told that IIT Madras also has floated a company that will do accreditation. But your guess is as good as mine. Who will go? That I don't know.